very good debate going on the culpability question. That is a question that is directly in Macbeth. Who is more to blame, the person who convinces or the person who is convinced, right? There's also in this play, right from the very beginning, this idea that people are subject to fate, and that, you know, just who they are is already predetermined. So how can we hold them responsible for their actions? And then there is that question of, what was the third one? Oh, ambition. And how far you will follow your ambition before it becomes unethical. So this happens in this play a lot. Let me just give you a little background on this play. Okay, but where are my notes? I'll just do it. I need my notes because there's not much. All right, so the play is about an 11th century Scottish king. It's kind of like King Arthur, where it's like they know that this king existed. They know certain aspects of his life, but he's kind of become a legend and people tell stories about him. That's like what Macbeth was like. So Shakespeare did this a lot. He was inspired by sort of legends like that, and he built the play around that legend. Really, there's nothing very truthful about Macbeth the play. Like, this didn't actually happen, except for, yeah, there was a Scottish king named Macbeth. That's basically it. In real life, he was kind of responsible for promoting Christianity and like sort of turning Scotland from a pagan country into a Christian country. But that's not really what this play is going to be too much about. But there are little echoes of it. Shakespeare wrote the play around 1606. We don't actually know the exact date because we don't know really anything about Shakespeare exactly. People will spend like their whole lives researching Shakespeare and trying to find like another of his signatures. There's only 7 known in existence, and he spells his name differently in all of them. So people even have arguments whether that is actually Shakespeare. There's pictures, or there's like not even a picture, there's like a bust of Shakespeare, and everyone argues, how much did this actually look like him? So we really don't know very much about him. But we know when plays were kind of performed for at least early on, because we see reviews of those plays. So it's around 1606, and the reason that's important is because that is right when King James is taking over for Queen Elizabeth. So James I is the reigning king. Shakespeare wrote this play, and people think sort of to appease King James a little bit, like to spark his interest, because they always performed the very popular plays for royalty, and James was super interested in the supernatural. So he was like way interested. He had like books on demonology, and he like believed in witches and was like very interested in how like the spirits were interacting with our world. And so Shakespeare adds things like witches and ghosts to Macbeth in order to like get James to like his play. And he needs to do that because he's also being very critical of people like King James in this play. King James believed in divine succession. So he felt like God chose him to be king. And that can be a really dangerous position for a king to have, because then a king believes that everything that they say has been ordained by God. So if they say witches are real, well, then God must have wanted him to say that because God chose him to be king, you know? So it's like Shakespeare in this play is kind of critiquing that idea that a king is always divinely right. All right. It's also about a lot of other things, though. It's not just about critiquing royalty. It's also about PTSD. It's about like your level of influence on other people. It's about what guilt can do to you, and whether or not you can ever be redeemed from your guilt. And it's also about gender and gender roles. There's some really interesting stuff between Macbeth and his wife. So it's a very important play. And we're going to read just the first couple scenes so you can get a sense of what the language sounds like. And then for the rest of the class, we'll watch the movie. So in the very first scene, there are witches. First witch, second witch, third witch. All right, and in this scene, there's usually fog going, there's eerie lights, like usually there will be like green lights going, and like it's supposed to be very, very over the top dramatic. So the 3 people who are going to read this, like I want you to do a witch voice. So who will be the first witch? Sam. Who will be the second witch? Isaac. And who will be the third witch? Nathan. Yeah, all the witches are men in our class, yeah. Okay, so it's a very, very short scene. We're just gonna read it together and remember that you're trying to get that like witch sounding voice. So skip ahead all the way through the introduction, find Act 1, Scene 1.
On page 7, but not the actual page 7.
Yeah, there's a big long intro.
This intro is ridiculous. I don't leave the theater.
Well, no, they don't read the intro. That's just for the written play.
They start by giving a biography.
That would be awful.
That's how they start.
Okay, witches, are you there?
Yes.
Okay, everyone follow along. It's just this one page scene. Go ahead. So there's thunder and lightning. So it's like an open place. It's usually like the moors of Scotland. There's thunder and lightning going on. And enter these three witches.
I can start.
Yep.
When shall we three meet again? In thunder, lightning, or rain? When the hurly-burly's done, when the battle is lost and won.
That will be at the setting sun.
Where the place? Upon the heath. I come Green Mountain. Hello, cows. Fair is foul, and foul is fair. Ours is long and guilty air.
That was perfect. Yes, that's what it sounds like. So it sounds very ominous and terrifying. Yeah.
I would like to say, I did this play in 6th grade and I was a witch and I had to wear a beard.
Because there's going to be a scene where they talk about the beard. So you say this casting is pretty good. Yeah. Which were you? Which
I think
witch?
that's the first.
Oh, the head witch. I love that you guys did this in what was it, 6th grade?
Yeah,
My sister- my
Messed
sister
up
did it
play
in
to do
her
in 6th
6th
grade.
grade.
We did Midsummer Night's Dream, which is like almost entirely about sex. So that was also inappropriate too.
What was your child?
It was just
How did you
in
become a
Orem.
lifeguard teacher?
I think it was like the first grade of last.
All right. Okay, so we're not going to read scene 2. I'm just going to tell you what happens in scene 2. We'll watch them. So basically, these witches are entering, they say, when the battle's lost and won, they are talking about a specific battle. Ireland and Scotland are at war. A prominent member of the government in Scotland has defected. He is a traitor and he has gone over to Ireland. His name is MacDonald. So there has been that is it, right? Yeah, MacDonald. There's been this traitor who goes over to Ireland and now they are in this battle. The traitor was what is called a thane. It's kind of like an earl, you know. He was called the Thane of Cawdor. And at the head of the Scottish King's army is a general named Macbeth. He is also the Thane of Glamis. So he is also like prominent politically, but he's the general of the army. And he and MacDonald are in this big fight. And it says that they are like two spent swimmers. They do cling together. So it's like they are exhausted fighting in all their armor. And it is like they are just trying to keep each other from drowning. But ultimately, Macbeth defeats MacDonald. So Scotland has won the war because of Macbeth. And the king is obviously super excited about this. His name is King Duncan. And he says, okay, well then we are going to make Macbeth the Thane of Cawdor. So instead of MacDonald, who will be executed because he was this traitor, Macbeth is going to take this really prominent position instead. Okay, then let's read scene 3. So for this scene, we also need a Macbeth. And we need his BFF, Banquo. And I think an Angus and a Ross. A Ross and an Angus.
Angus reminds me of the horse from Brave. That's
All right, so we've got our witches. They're going to say witches. Who would like to play Macbeth, our lead? Awesome, Christiane. Okay, and then who would like to play his best friend Banquo?
We're just switching genders from all
Yeah,
the
this is
roles.
great. Who wants to play Ross? He's just like a soldier in the army. He doesn't have to. Anyone?
That looks like a Mallory job.
Oh, yeah, go Mel.
I'll be one of them, but one of you has to be. I'll be Ross. Someone needs to be Angus. He also has just a couple lines.
I'll be.
Ben.
Yeah.
I'm a burger.
All right, so scene 3, we are again out on the moors and we start with the witches and they are going to cast a spell. So go ahead, witches.
Where is it? Sorry.
Scene 3, page 13. Yeah.
Oh, where hast thou been, sister?
Killing swine.
Sister, where art thou?
A sailor's wife has chestnuts in her lap, and munched and munched and munched. Give me, quoth I. Or it's the witch, the rough-feed brilliant cries.
Oh, you have a long.
Oh, it keeps going. Her husband's to Alto gone, master of the tiger. But in a sea, I'll hit a sail, and like a rat without a tail, I'll do, and I'll do.
I'll give thee a win.
That's kind.
And then another.
I myself have all the other, and the very ports they blow, all the coaches that they know. I, the shipman's guard, I drain him dry as hay, sleep shall neither night or day, hang upon his penthouse lid, he shall live a man forbid. Where he said nights 9 times 9. Shall he dwindle, peak, and pine, though his bark cannot be lost, yet it shall be done for sauce.
Show me.
Here I have a pilot's thumb wrapped in homeward he did come, drum with it.
No, there's a drum with it. Okay.
Let's go. Macbeth.com.
The weird sisters, hand in hand, both to the sea and land. Thus to go about, thrice to thine and thrice to mine, and thrice again to make it nine. Peace and charms wound up.
Oh, that was good. Okay, so they have cast the spell. Enter Macbeth and Banquo.
So foul and fair day I have not seen. How far is to call for this? What are these, so withered and so wild in their attire, that look not like the inhabitants of the earth, and yet are on? Live you, or are you aught that man may question? You may seem to understand me. By each at once her choppy fingers laying upon her skinny lips. You should be women, and yet your beards forbid me to interpret that you are so. Speak, if you can. What are you?
All hail Macbeth, hail to thee, Dame of Glamis.
All hail Macbeth. Hail to thee, Thane of Condor.
All hail Macbeth. Thou shalt be king hereafter.
Good sir, why do you start and seem to fear things that do sound so fair? I've the name of truth. Are you fantastical, or that indeed which outwardly you show? My noble partner you greet with present grace and great prediction of noble having and of royal hope. That he seems wrapped with all. To me you speak not. If you can look into the seeds of time and say which grain will grow and which will not, speak then to me, who neither beg nor fear your favors nor your truth.
First witch.
Hail,
Hail.
Hail.
lesser Macbeth and greater.
Not so happy, yet much happier.
Thou shalt give kings. Thou be none. So all hail Macbeth and Banquo.
Banquo and Macbeth, all hail.
Okay, pause for a second. All right, so the witches just made a prediction. The first witch says, "Hail to thee, Thane of Glamis." Now that is his current position. So his response would be, hail, hello, But the second witch says, "Hail to thee, Thane of Cawdor." Macbeth does not know yet that the king has labeled him the Thane of Cawdor, that he's gotten that position. So this is the witches kind of like having superhuman knowledge of what is currently happening, right? And then it says, "All hail Macbeth that shall be king hereafter." So it's kind of like the past, the present, and now the future. You're going to be king sometime in the future. And Banquo stops and says, "Why are you so worried about this?" Like he says, "Why do you start?" Like, Macbeth has some sort of reaction to this. And Banquo says, "That sounds awesome. Like you're going to be king. That's so cool. then he's like, hey, I want to know the future. Witches, tell me what my future is. And the first witch says you're going to be lesser than Macbeth and greater. So somehow he's going to be like lesser, maybe in authority or maybe in morals or in whatever. But he's also going to be greater than him. He's going to be not so happy, yet much happier. And then this last part, he says, you shall get kings, though thou be none. Which get there, if you look at the little note, it says beget, right? You're going to have sons that are kings, even though you are never going to be king. So those are the two predictions that the witches make for Banquo and Macbeth. Okay, Macbeth, go ahead.
Thank you, imperfect speaker. Tell me more. By silent death, I know I am Thane of the Hall of Cawdor. The Thane of Cawdor lives, a prosperous gentleman, and to be king stands not within the prospect of belief. No more than to be Cawdor. Say from whence you owe this strange intelligence of why. Upon this blasted keep you stop our way. With such prophetic speak, I charge you.
Oh yeah, the witches. Okay.
The earth has bubbles as the water has, and these are of them. Whither are they vanished? Into the air, and whence the incorporeal melted, as breath into the wind. Would they have stayed? Were such things here as we do speak about? Or have we eaten on the insane brute that takes the reason prisoner? Your children shall be king. You shall be king. And Thane of Cawdor too. Was it not so? To the self same tune and words. Who's here?
So enter Ross and Angus. They're basically soldiers, like attendants to the king. And am I one of these? Yeah, Ross. Okay. The king hath happily received, Macbeth, the news of thy success. And when he reads thy personal venture in the rebels' fight, his wonders and his praises do contend which should be thine or his. Silenced with that, in viewing o'er the rest of the self-same day, he finds thee in the stout Norwegian ranks, nothing afeared of what thyself didst make, strange images of death. As thick as tail come post with post, and everyone did bear thy praises in his kingdom's great defense, and poured them down before him.
We are sent to give thee prologue, and that sort of thing, only to herald thee in his sight, not pay thee.
And for an earnest of a greater honor, he bade me from him call thee Thane of Cawdor, in which addition, hail, most worthy Thane, for it is thine. And Banquo says,
What can the devil speak true? The Thane of Cawdor lives. Why do you dress me in sorrow's robe?
It was the same lives yet, but under heavy judgment bears what life which deserves to lose, whether he was combined.
still you.
With those of Norway, or did line the revolution, it is help and being. For that with both he labored in his country's back, I know not, but treason capital, invest and proof, hath overpowered them.
Then is Thane of Cawdor. The greatest is the line. Thanks for your king.
And you're still talking?
Do not hold your children shall be king. When those that gave the Thane of Cawdor to me promised no less to them, that trusted home might yet enkindle you unto the crown. Besides the Thane of Cawdor, but 'tis strange, and oftentimes to win us to our harm, the instruments of darkness tell us truths. Win us with honest trifles to betray the truth. Betrays in deepest consequence. Cousins, a word I pray you. Truth firstborn, and having prologues dwelling at, and the imperial seat. I thank you, gentlemen. The supernatural felicity cannot be ill, cannot be good. If ill, why hath it given me success? Commencing in truth that I am Thane of Cawdor. If good, why do I yield that justice? For it in it does unpick my care. And make my heart, not my ribs. Against the youth nature, present fears are less than mortal imagining. My thought, murder yet is fantastical, shapes from my single state of man. That function is smothered in surmise, and nothing is but what is not. Look how our partners wrapped. If chance will have me meet, why chance may crown me without my spirit. New honors come upon him, like our strange garments, cleave not to their mold, but with aid of you. Somewhat may, time and the hour runs to the rapid day. Worthy Macbeth, we stay upon your leisure. If me your favor. My gold ring was brought with the things forgotten. Kind gentlemen, your pains are registered where every day I turn. The least great done, let us support the king. Think upon what has chanced, and at once, the interim having waited, let us speak. Our free hearts to each other.
Very gladly.
Well then enough. Come, friend.
All right, so Macbeth gives a pretty famous monologue right there where it says two truths are told as happy prologues to the swelling act of the imperial theme. Basically, he's saying like he's thinking about whether or not he should take this advice, not advice, but this sort of prophecy from the witches seriously. So Banquo is saying like, yeah, it comes from a strange place, but sometimes truths come from bad places. And Macbeth is like, I am of two minds about this. It cannot be bad for me to be king. That's great. I'm ambitious. I would like to be king, but it also cannot be good to be king. And he's also thinking about this prophecy that Banquo got. If Macbeth is to be king, then why would Banquo's sons be king? And so there's this like kind of contradiction in the prophecy that doesn't sit well with him. But at the end, he says, well, if I'm going to be king, may chance crown me without my stir, meaning I'm not going to help it along. Like if I'm king, so be it. And then he and Banquo part as friends. They're like, hey, if anything weird happens, like if you're feeling any way, you tell me, right, bro? And Banquo's like, yeah, for sure. And then they part ways. Okay, so we're going to watch the movie now. Has anybody, no, you haven't read this play or seen this play, except for our sixth grader over there. Okay, so the play I'm going to show you, we did get permission at the beginning of the year to show you this one. It was aired on PBS, so like that shows you how like it's kind of tame, but also it would definitely be PG-13 because they take some liberties with the violence in these scenes. They make it very violent in these scenes. So if you need to look away, you can. It's like basically they've updated it to some sort of like vague situation. So it's like supposed to be sort of reminiscent of World War II. There'll be guns blasting and like you'll see tanks and so on. And there's this like kind of like Nazi Germany, maybe Stalin kind of feel to some of the uniforms and the settings. So it updates it, but it still uses the same Shakespearean language. And then the witches are not what you would totally expect. I don't want to give that away, but they are quite creepy. So are you ready for that?
I'm so ready.
Okay, cool.
Hold my hand.
Yeah, but they updated it, and so they just like sort of placed it in a more current contemporary setting.
Shakespeare would be upset.
They don't have beards. They do look like women.
But this would be 11, not even 6. This is back when we had like sad days.
Back when they had sad
This
days.
was during the dark age.
Oh yeah, yeah.